Hi everyone, so we are reading the next chapter of the London Eye Mystery by Siobhan Dowd. I'm actually going to cover chapters 19 and 20 today. So chapter 19 is called The Boy on the Train. Mum came in and Kat sat on the desk, atop of the photos and the theory list. Hi guys, Mum said. Hi Mum, said Kat. She swung her legs backwards and forwards and stared into space. This isn't much of a half term for you, is it? Don't worry Mum, we're fine. Mum smiled. Then she said the police were visiting us again and we should go downstairs in case they wanted to ask us anything. Then she went out and Kat got off the desk. She hid the theory list and the photographs in the little drawer under my desk. Then she picked up the souvenir picture and said that she'd hand it over to the police, just in case it was of some use. Then she went out of my room. I opened the drawer. I found my favourite photo, the one Salem had taken of Kat and me on the footbridge. It looked as if a corner of the London Eye was emerging from my shoulder. Then I put it in my book of weather systems. Then I followed Kat downstairs. Soon the police car drew up and Mum and Aunt Gloria took the same places on the sofa and Dad showed in Detective Inspector Pierce, who was on her own. She sat on the same chair as yesterday. Nobody said anything for a minute. Then Kat went up to her and offered her the souvenir photograph. I'm sorry we didn't give it to you sooner, she said. I meant to yesterday, but we forgot, didn't we, Ted? I said. Inspector Pierce took the photo and shook her head and smiled. We already have that one, Kat, she said, along with 64 others, but thanks anyway. Aunt Gloria grabbed the photograph and peered at it. What's this? It's a picture of the people in the pod, Aunt Gloria explained. The pod that... Not a trace of Salem in any of them, I'm afraid, Detective Inspector Pierce said. Nor in the CCTV footage. I've been checking much of it myself. In that particular pod, a rather large gentleman. She leaned over and pointed to the big white-haired man in the raincoat, stood in the same spot for nearly the whole ride and blocked much of the camera's view. Aunt Gloria tossed the picture down on the floor near my feet, and I picked it up. You know what I think? She said. I think he never went up the wheel in the first place. That's an interesting theory, Aunt Gloria, I said, and one that I considered too, but... Ted, Mum said. She put a finger to her lip. That is body language even I know how to read. It means be quiet. There was another silence. Then the inspector said she had a possible lead. A boy matching Salem's description had been seen at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon by a guard at Euston Station, dodging the ticket barrier and getting on a train just a moment before the doors were locked. A train? What train? Aunt Gloria said. An intercity between London and Manchester. Manchester? But that's where we've just come from. Why would he go back there? The boy, and if it was Salem, was on his own. Unfortunately, that's where we lost sight of him. The guard on the train has no memory of him. He could have got off at any of the stops in between. But the Manchester police are checking to see if Salem is perhaps in Manchester. With his dad, Aunt Gloria said. Actually, he's not with his father, I'm afraid. It was the first place we looked. The inspector produced Salem's address book. We've spoken to everybody you told us he was close to. His cousins, Ramesh and Yasmin, your neighbours, the Tysons, his school friend, Marcus Flood, and his old friend from primary school, Paul Burridge. And none of them say they've heard from him since you left the day you left the day before yesterday. That's... Hush, Ted, said Mum. If Salem didn't go to Manchester, Detective Inspector Pierce said to Aunt Gloria, where do you think he'd be most likely to go? She stared into space in front of her and then sighed. I don't think, she said. Sorry? I think the boy on the train is like the boy last night, the boy in the mall, the boy you thought was Salem and wasn't. Inspector Pierce reached over and touched Aunt Gloria's hand. I'm sincerely sorry about that, Gloria. We didn't have a proper photo ID then, and we do now. From around an envelope she'd been holding, she took out the photo of Salem and showed it to us. Your ex-husband gave us this. Would you say it's a good likeness? Salem was in a school blazer with a sweatshirt underneath and a faint line of a moustache over his lips. He was not looking either happy or sad in the photograph because his lips were straight. That's him, Aunt Gloria whispered. I bought 2 copies so that Salem could give one to his father. To Rashid. I do it every year. I don't know why. I don't even know if he has them framed. The doorbell rang. Dad went out into the hall to see who it was and heard voices, and then walked in a tall Indian man in jeans and a green shirt. "Speak of the devil," Aunt Gloria hissed. I only heard her say this because I was standing next to her. I didn't see anything particularly satanic about the strange man. I thought he must be a plainclothes officer. My hand flapped. "What's this?" the man said. "Have you found my son?" He looked at Aunt Gloria. She looked at him. "What are you doing here?" "I'm looking for my son. What else? Trust you to go and lose him." Maybe Satan had entered the room after all, because everybody started talking very loudly. I put my hands over my ears, but I could still hear them. I counted the people in the room. 7. I tried to guess the ages of those I didn't know. Then I added up the ages. When I arrived at the figure of 233 and worked out the average was 33.3 reoccurring, everyone was still shouting their heads off. The difference between laughing your head off and shouting your head off is that with one you're happy and the other you're angry. I like it much better when people are laughing their heads off. Detective Inspector Pierce got up from her chair. "I'd better go," she said, but I'm not sure that anyone listened except for me and Dad, who had not joined in the shouting either. Dad showed her to the hallway and I followed. You could still hear the raised voices in the living room. "Goodbye, Mr. Spark." "I'm sorry again about last night." I felt Dad's arm on my shoulder tighten. "Will you find out who that poor boy was?" "We're working on it," Inspector Pierce said. "And as for Salem, when everyone's calmed down, can you ask them if they would agree to us calling in the press?" "The press?" "Yes. If Salem's picture gets into the news stories, somebody who's seen him might well come forward." Dad nodded. "I'll ask them." "Inspector Pierce," I said, "Salem got a call on his mobile yesterday, approximately 10:50 a.m. He said it was from a friend calling from Manchester to say goodbye." "Did he? How interesting." She smiled at me. "If only some of my officers had half your brains, Ted." Then she nodded and walked down the tiny garden path to where the police were parked. Dad and I went back into the living room. Rashid was saying that the police had burst into his busy evening surgery that night, and all his patients must have thought he was another Dr. Death. Aunt Gloria was clinging to a cushion, as if she was about to throw it at him and saying that all he ever cared about was what other people thought of him. Mum was standing up and holding Kat by the elbow and ushering us back into the hallway. She closed the living room door behind her. "God almighty, let's leave them to it," she said. "Let's go get a pizza." So we did. Pitty must have been pleased because we had 4 enormous pizzas at the pizza restaurant nearby. I had a Coca-Cola and Kat had Sprite. Mum had a beer and Dad had a bottle of sparkling water. Dad and I ate all of ours, and Mum and Dad swapped their last slice and left only bits of the crust, which meant that everybody had been extremely hungry. And over the meal, we didn't talk about Salem. I talked about thunderstorms and why they happen, and Kat showed Dad how she removed the silver nail polish, and he had said he was glad Catwoman had gone back to the moon. When we got back, Rashid and Aunt Gloria were sitting on the sofa, arm in arm. This puzzled me until I remembered what Mum had said about them having a love-hate relationship, and I worked out that that was the same about Rashid and Aunt Gloria. Mum said to Rashid he was welcome to sleep on the couch if he wanted to, and he said he was sure. And she said she was, and he said she was most kind and he would. And then Kat and I were told to go upstairs, so we did. Okay, we're now on to chapter 20, called Eavesdropping. Kat curled up on the lilo and went to sleep. The house went quiet. Kat made a funny lapping noise. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of Salem, seeing his face, with his lips turned up, fading in and out of the spokes of the London Eye. Then I remembered him saying I looked like a cool dude, and telling me that he got lonely. The boy on the slab, the boy on the train, Salem or not Salem. I switched on the desk light. Kat didn't wait, she just moaned and turned over. I got my weather system book off my desk and looked at the photo of Kat and me on the bridge as taken by Salem. I don't know much about photos, but I could see it was a good photo, not like the kind I take, because the lines around our faces were sharp and we were exactly in the middle of the photo. A small strip of the eye's wheel came from up the shoulder, with 7 of the 32 pods shining in the sunlight. I put the photo back in its hiding place. I realised the saying, I realised that the same is true of the London Eye. It goes round in a cyclone. I'd always thought of it as going anti-clockwise. If you look at it from the south bank of the river and how it goes clockwise. Whirlwinds and wheels, clockwise or anti-clockwise, depending on how you look at it, male or female, nematodes such as earthworms, depending on how you look at it. Then there's Dad's favourite saying, a glass, half empty or half full, depending how you look at it. I scratched my head, depending how you look at it. The same object can be or do opposite things at once. I remembered a picture Kata once showed me of a waterfall. Only the way it was painted, it looked as if the water was flowing upwards. Perhaps this was a clue to Salem's disappearance. Perhaps Kat and I were looking at things the wrong way up or the wrong way round. I got excited then because I'm good at looking at things differently. When I was little, I once drew an egg as 3 rings, the shell, the white and the yolk. And it looked like the planet, Saturn, and the teacher at the school said that it was a very unusual way to draw an egg. She said I had drawn it in a cross-section, as if I had X-ray eyes and could see straight through it. I tried to look at Salem, riding in his pod with his X-ray eyes, but I could only see figures in the pod, dark shadows, turning to have their souvenir photo taken. So next, I picked up the souvenir shot. After Aunt Gloria tossed it on the floor earlier and the police had taken it, they didn't want it, I'd taken it back up to my desk. I studied the African women, the big white-haired man, the fat couple and their children, and the Japanese tourists. All I could see of the girl in the pink jacket, who'd stood nearest on the queue, was her arm waving at the camera above the other people. I could not see her boyfriend, nor the tall blonde woman and the grey-haired man who was shorter than her. It had been a crowded pod. Not everyone had fitted in the picture. Salem might have been at the back somewhere, behind the shoulders and cluttered bodies. I tried to look in between the torsos with X-ray eyes, but it was grey, murky shadow, tiny dots, nothing more. I pushed it away. I got up and crept downstairs to the kitchen. I knew where Mum kept the salt and vinegar crisps hidden and I needed some. I took 2 packets out and crept back up to the hallway. I paused. The living room door was ajar and I could hear Aunt Gloria's voice. I decided to listen in case there was a clue. Maybe Aunt Gloria knew something that she didn't realise, but if I heard it, maybe I would be able to see the significance. Mum had told me it's wrong to eavesdrop on people. Eavesdropping is a strange word. Eaves are parts of roofs that project over the walls. The only thing that drops them is rainwater, and rainwater cannot hear. Kat eavesdrops all the time. She lurks in the hallway, and then when Mum and Dad are talking about serious matters such as school reports, and if I tell her it's wrong to do this, she hisses at me to get lost. But tonight, I decided to eavesdrop myself. I hate waiting, Aunt Gloria was saying. I know you do. It was Rashid. Patience and you, they don't go. We should call in the press, Rashid, like Inspector Pierce says. Not yet, Gloria. I don't want our private affairs all over the place. There you go again, always caring about what other people think. What does it matter? What matters is Salem. OK, Gloria, we'll call the press tomorrow, if Salem isn't found by then. Then there was a pause. I'd do anything just to know Salem was alive. Somewhere, anywhere, unharmed, she said. He is, trust me, I can feel it in my bones. I hope your bones are right, said Aunt Gloria. Oh, Rashid, if he comes back safe, let's be in touch more. It hasn't been good for him, our never talking. So why are you taking him to New York then? I nearly had to put an injunction on you. You didn't. I did. You never told me what you were planning. I only learned about it from Salem. But I need the money, Rashid. I pay you every month, don't I? As we agreed? But it's not enough. I need a good salary too. Why? To pay for all your clothes? The voices were getting louder again. I edged back towards the stairs. You can rise as far up in your profession as you want, Aunt Gloria said. So why can't I? You're impossible, Gloria. You only ever think of yourself. That's a lie. I'm the one who looks after Salem day in, day out. He's lived with me all his life. He's mine. He goes where I go. Salem, Rashid said, is Salem. He doesn't belong to either of us. There was a pause. I stood still. You're right, Aunt Gloria said. If anything happens to Salem, you say you'd never forgive me, but I would never forgive myself. Her voice wobbled as if she was going to cry. I crept up the first stair. Don't blame yourself, Gloria, Rashid said. Then I heard him groan. Salem asked me something the last time he visited me. What? He asked if he could come live with me. I don't believe that. He did. Never. Impossible. I don't know if he meant it, but he did ask. And what did you say? I said that I was too busy every day at the surgery, that he was better off with his mother, that he should go to New York, and it was a fine city. I said no. I didn't even sit down and talk to him about it. He asked as I was rushing out to a patient. I turned a deaf ear on him, Gloria. Oh, Rashid, don't you start. I can't stand to see grown men cry. I fled upstairs as fast as I could. I'd had enough of eavesdropping for one night. Okay, that's the end of chapter 20. Thank you, everyone.